Okay, awesome. Andrew, do you want to pray for us today?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful that we can come here and meet as a group for our business class. Bless us that we'll be able to remember things we've learned, be able to discuss it all. And we say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. Okay, so did you guys all read the case study?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mostly.
On Lance Armstrong?
Mm-hmm.
You read most of it?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty much a simple story, but it just goes into crazy details about everything. But so basically, Lance Armstrong, he did the Tour de France bicycling, and he won 7 years in a row, which is like the most anyone's ever done. Some people have done like 4 in a row, but yeah, that was like the most insane. And for years, everyone always accused him of like doping and using drugs and stuff, but he always denied it. And then we find out that he admits that he actually did on Oprah Winfrey, and a bunch of his teammates and friends, they all did it as well. And yeah, super unethical and super sad. Oh, and in the middle of there, he had cancer. And there was yellow wristbands. I remember when I was in elementary school.
Live strong.
Live strong, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so sad how it all turns out.
Yeah.
So that's the main gist of the study, right? Am I missing anything?
No.
That's pretty basic.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's only there's not a ton of questions, so it should be pretty easy. Okay, the first one is, what is Armstrong's legacy? What do you guys think?
Unfortunately, like right now, he has the legacy of being a cheater and a fraud and a liar. I mean, like before all this came out, he was like a national hero. Like everybody loved Lance. He was able to survive cancer. I mean, he was a really inspirational story, but then like after all of this came out, he's lost all credibility. His legacy is one of that, like I said, is a cheater and nobody can take him seriously. And he's one of those cautionary tales now, I would say.
Right. Anything else on that? No, yeah. I was just gonna say that he, like you said, he got all his sponsors stripped, like nothing. And before, people really did look up to him, like as a, awesome athlete. He was really strong and all that. But so quickly,
All
Gone.
yeah. I think it's cool because you can see the 2 different huge ends of the spectrum. Okay, so Armstrong organized and led what was perhaps the most sophisticated and comprehensive cheating program in the history of sports. Who suffered from his cheating and what were the costs?
I would have to say probably the people who it cost the most were the other competitors that weren't cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would be pretty mad if I found out that the person who won did it by cheating and I didn't cheat and lost.
Right.
Missed out on all that prize money, like so much money and all the prestige and all that.
Exactly, because even though he got stripped of those 7 things, it's like that was years ago. All those people that would have won, they don't get the sponsorships or all the
years anymore.
Yeah, it was forever ago. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also it hurt his teammates too. The ones that they came up fine, had a ton of natural talent, and then they started getting into that because of what he was into. And I think there was a quote in the study that it just basically said that obviously cycling's a team sort of thing. So the better your teammates do, they're helping you out more. So he was pushing his teammates to be the best they could, and that was kind of the reason he had them taking all the drugs and stuff like that, so they could be better, so he could be better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're all dealing with a lot of health issues because of all the drugs they took.
Yeah, gotta be something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think also, obviously him himself suffered from it. Everyone all of a sudden hates him. Just doesn't look up to him the same way. And his family and stuff too. That's got to be sad. I mean, think of his kids like walking through school and being like, "Hey, your dad cheated," like,
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Yeah, I know." But like, that's so sad, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a lot of people were affected because of it.
Mhm.
Were the other riders like Hamilton and Landis and those who testified, do you think they were too loyal to Armstrong or they were not loyal enough? Should they have kept their mouths shut or should they have said something sooner?
That's a tough. I mean, like, I would say that they were too loyal at the beginning. I mean, they were definitely just like, and if they were really bothered by it as much as they claimed they were, wouldn't they have come forward sooner than when it started becoming a bigger story and money could be had? Because I mean, like, this had been stuff that had been being reported on since the late '90s. And I think they were just too loyal because, like Andrew was saying, they wanted to succeed, and he kept pushing them. And like they had a lot of really natural talent to begin with, but they wanted to win, and they became too loyal to Lance until later in their lives.
They were probably afraid because they were going to be affected by it too, so they kept their mouths shut.
Yeah.
They probably liked winning.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got to be hard too because I don't know about you guys, but I know that like when I do something wrong, it like eats at me. You know what I mean? I'm like thinking during those long races, that's probably like what they're thinking about is like, oh, you know, my next transfusion or, you know, like I'm cheating right now, but I'm winning. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be like going on in their minds like all the time. And that doesn't feel good, you know?
Yeah.
You can't sleep good, at least in my opinion. I don't know.
I can't either. I don't understand how people can sleep at night and do those things.
Right. So, I mean, I think all of us, we would hope that we would nip it in the bud at the beginning, but that's crazy.
Oh, that's true. And then I guess it was kind of harder to say something once it got started because if you put yourself in their shoes, who's going to out Lance Armstrong?
Yeah.
Right.
Winning Tour de France's, he's like everybody's looking up to him. He had cancer, and it could definitely be seen as like a cheap shot at him. And would anybody really believe you if you actually came forward and said something early on?
Yeah.
It probably started as a really low scale thing. And so they were probably at first like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying like hypothetically that maybe at first they were like, oh, like he doesn't even do it that often. It's not a big deal. And then it just escalated. And so finally it was too late to say anything without being implicated themselves.
Yeah.
And after you've done like, 5 and then 6 tours and then your 7th tour, you're like, we're just so deep into it now. Like
far in.
back. Yeah, that's so true. It's just like, I guess it's like anything in today's day and age, you know?
Yeah.
You get dragged into something and usually drags you in deeper.
Yeah.
I remember once we were talking in church about how Satan works. I mean, like diving right into the gospel stuff, but just reminded me like how Satan works, how he's not gonna like be like, hey, here's some drugs, why don't you take some? It's gonna be like, hey, why don't you go to this party? You don't have to do drugs, just go, it'll be fun. Like it starts small and just kind of gets his foot in the door, you know? And I think that's maybe kind of what happened here where Lance was just like, oh, like a little bit won't hurt. You know, just to help a little. Because he was at a disadvantage with the cancer and he had trouble finding sponsors and he probably just wanted to get his foot in the door and just escalated from there.
Right. It's so annoying because like they had such natural raw talent already. You know what I mean? Like,
like he was
like you're
really
already good.
Cancer.
Right.
Yeah. And his problem later wasn't that he wasn't still good. It was just he couldn't get anyone to sponsor him because he was a risk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so this kind of leads, we kind of started talking about this, but think about a situation where you witnessed a leader, either like a formal leader or an informal leader, make a decision for others that made you uncomfortable. Like what was the situation and how did you feel about it? You guys think of any times in your life when that's happened?
I've been having a really hard I'm thinking of something. I know there's something.
I was the same. I was like, man, I'm sure that's happened, but
Yeah.
The only one I can think of is my mission president for a while was he made it to where we couldn't have meal appointments in our mission with members. You were not allowed to go have a meal appointment at an active member's home. You could have a meal appointment at a less active or an investigator's, but not at an active member's home.
dang.
And
Where
like
did you live?
Tennessee.
That's weird.
And I thought it was a weird thing. I was like, I think that'll just kill any missionary work we have going. Because I was like, how are we supposed to, get the trust of members if we can't go in there, share a spiritual thought, leave the spirit with their family, let them know that we can teach, we know what we're doing.
Right.
But I mean, obviously he's the mission president, so you just kind of have to do what he says.
Right.
And like, missionary work died for like 3 months. It's just like people, nothing was getting done. It was just like we couldn't get any referrals. And he's like, why are we getting referrals? Because no one talks to us.
Yeah.
It was so uncomfortable because like at first it was like we have to tell all the members, no, I can't have dinner with you anymore. And it was something I was uncomfortable, but like you just have to do it, and it was not great results. He changed track and we were allowed to have meal appointments again after 3 months, but those were a rough 3 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay. You guys think of any other? Andrew or Stephanie?
I can't.
I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
like any mission, during the mission there were a ton of things here and there, just about like people just like not really like following the rules here and there and all that kind of stuff, and you just sort of like go along. It's like little things,
Yeah.
It's like maybe it's like staying at a member's house a little bit longer than you should or something like that, but nothing big.
Right. Well, I remember since we're on the mission thing right now, it's okay, Stephanie. It's not that big a deal. But I remember on my mission, like I had a bunch of zone leaders that were like 18 years old, and I went out when I was 21. So they're like years younger than me, and like some of the things they said, I would just be like rolling my eyes out. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're retarded and you don't know anything. You know what I mean? And I mean, but that was just me, like probably not being humble. But there were times where I was just like, no, this is dumb. You don't know. And I promise you, I do know. But I just had to, be humble. And I mean, I guess it doesn't always make me feel uncomfortable, but probably sometimes it did, because I'd be like, you really
Probably
don't.
frustrating.
Right. Yeah. And I think also like outside of the mission, like with work, like some of your like leaders or managers, I don't know, I've just been surrounded by some people and they'll just like make comments or things about other people that are just like rude, or you know what I mean, like they think they know, or they'll lead you in a weird way, and you're just like, I don't know, I just learned from all of them, and I'm like, I just wouldn't do it like that, you know what I mean? I'm like, I would just treat people better, and yeah, I don't know, and that sometimes makes me feel like uncomfortable or awkward.
Yeah.
But
I did think of one. I didn't serve a mission. Served a different kind of mission. Still serving it, I guess. But I used to work for Zion's Bank, and one day we were called into a meeting, and they said that they wanted us to push the credit cards because all the branches were doing a competition in the area, and whoever got the most credit card applications approved, all the members of that branch would win an iPad. And I was like, well, that's cool, but I already have an iPad, and I don't want to be asking people to sign up for a credit card. Like, that was like half my job at Target before that, and I hated having to push the credit cards.
yeah.
And so I didn't. Like, every once in a while, like, so we had this thing where we put a Mountain Dew up on the thing, and every time a customer asked what the Mountain Dew was for, we'd tell them, oh, it's to remind us to, like, talk to customers about our credit card. And I hated doing it, and I'd just be like, yeah, I'm just supposed to talk to you about the credit card. Do you want one? I was not into it at all. I hated it so much, having to push credit cards. It was so stupid. I quit before the contest even ended, so.
Yeah.
I got pregnant, and I couldn't handle school and work. So then I didn't have to worry about it anymore, but.
Yeah, the job made you miserable.
I was very uncomfortable with having to push credit cards.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's like that, like anywhere you work with, anything you do, when you're like forced to do things that you're like, oh, this makes me feel weird. Yeah. Totally.
I was like, I already have an iPad.
Yeah, like I really don't need this.
Yeah, I don't want one. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, the next question kind of goes into the same thing. It says, think of a situation where you witnessed talented followers follow a leader into an uncomfortable or bad zone. What was the situation and what were the results? Did anyone object?
In my case,
The one I think of is
on an iPad.
Yeah.
mine's just my mission one again. Like, there's a lot of really talented missionaries and everything, and we all just went along with it. There's a couple people that opposed it. They questioned it openly in like the meetings, but like nothing changed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. Like, I'm sure I know one.
Yeah.
It's one of those tough situations. Like, I mean, I'm sure there is. I just don't.
Yeah.
Right. I have one. I can say it real quick. But basically, like, I grew up in Ohio, and so there's not Mormons there, really. Tons of, people that get into, like, underage drinking and things like that. So I was, exposed to that a lot in high school. So I had a really good, like, really fun friend group. And then one day they just started getting into that, like, at a party, and you could see they were, like, really talented people, really smart, really good at music, sports, all those kind of things like that. And then they just sort of started getting into not so great stuff. And you could kind of see the people that were like on the fence. They're like, oh, I don't know if we should do this. This isn't such a great thing. And me, being Mormon, I'm just like, no, sorry, I can't. I'm Mormon. I can't do it. Luckily, they didn't really push me that much. But it was nice because you could see a few other people would, like take strength. Then at least one person's not doing it, I won't. But then there are a lot of people that were just like, well, just this one time, why not?
Yeah,
he's just doing
Right.
And then it's not like there were crazy drastic effects. Like most of the people are still like doing fine, going to college, that kind of stuff. But there's definitely a few of them that have like struggled with alcohol addiction. Their lives have kind of been like changed. Their path of it all is way different. So it's just interesting how even just a little one-time kind of thing like that, just being influenced by somebody at a party can totally change where you're going.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. That's a good example. I thought of one kind of. I'm sure I did this when I was little, but like I didn't recognize it, but now I do recognize it. When I look at like young women and stuff, and they like choose to dress like immodestly and like follow the crowd, and I feel like that leads like, I don't know, creepy boys to like hit on you. And like, I don't know, it can just like be just like the little trigger to like going down the wrong path. You know what I mean? And like in some girls where it's just like, oh, it's fine. I'll just wear my bikini or I'll just wear my short shorts, whatever. But then it's like that's like their whole wardrobe. And then they start going to parties and then, you know what I mean? So I guess it's like anything in the gospel where, if you're following the crowd and just doing the little wrong things, then it can lead to really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay, so did you guys think of any other ones, or should I go on? That's good. Okay. What are some basic principles that guide your integrity? Are there times when there's like a gray area? How do you choose correctly? I know for me, I like try to make the decision beforehand. We've talked a lot about this in business, when you come up to like unethical situations, it's like we've been taught in the gospel, like choose not to drink before the situation comes, and then you already know. Yep. And it's like that throughout all of our lives with like tons of different aspects. If you need to lie to achieve something, then you probably shouldn't do it. So I think that's one thing to like keep my integrity, is to like know that I'm going to be always honest and that I'm always going to, keep my standards. And so then when I hit a situation, there's no questions about it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
As far as like gray areas, there's a lot of that. Like you're like, well, it's not exactly bad to do this, but it's probably not the best thing. And so I try to think about like looking ahead and how my actions might the outcomes of my consequences, I guess, of my actions and how it affects me and people around me. If it's like overall good consequences, then it's probably okay. But like there are plenty of things that are really bad to do, but actually turn out to be really good for everybody else. So that's not like a definite way to do it, but it's a good place to start, I think.
Right.
Yeah, something I do. It might be a little extreme and definitely uncomfortable, but I like to visualize like what would my mom be thinking if she saw me doing this right now. It's yeah, definitely uncomfortable, but it works. Pretty effective.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
With mine, it's just like I don't know, like because like there's just established rules that we have to live by, and I try and make sure I live by those. As far as gray areas go, I don't really know. I don't really think about that because like I don't know. I try to just be an honest person in all things. I'd rather be known for being honest than for being like a. Because I've been told I'm rude because I'm too honest sometimes, and I'd rather be that than somebody that's like super friendly, but you never know if what I'm saying is true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like that's a tough one. Basic principle, honesty is what I try and go with.
Right. I think it's just living those basic principles we've been taught, like, you know, in the gospel our whole lives, but then just actually living them no matter what situation we're in. Even if we're on the winning Peloton team in the Tour de France. Be honest. Don't do drugs.
Don't do it.
No, I love that. I think it's important too to surround yourself by good people, you know, because then you don't have as much influence if none of them are going to be doing anything stupid or dumb. But yeah, that helps. Okay, the last question is, how will you personally measure your life? How will you measure success?
I've actually thought a lot about that one in the last day since I started this assignment. And I was kind of thinking about how, like, because, like, I'm an accounting major, and so there's a lot of talk about, like, ethical and unethical, and that your success depends on you being ethical. And this kind of goes back, I guess, to the last question where if you do something unethical, it might be good for you, but it'll hurt everybody else. Or if you do something ethical, it might hurt you, but it's in the best interest of everybody else. And that's kind of, I try to make goals that they may or may not be in my best interest, but good for the whole, like my family. And I try to make personal goals and goals for my family, like physical, spiritual, like just all these goals, short-term, long-term. And that's how I measure my success, by how I meet those goals. I don't measure my success by how much money I'm going to make. I don't care if I make like $1 million a year. I just want to live comfortably. And if I can live comfortably and live within our means, then I consider that successful. And if my kids grow up to be good people because of the things that I taught them, then I consider that a huge success.
Mm-hmm. I feel the same way. Like, both my husband and I, our parents are pretty, like, successful. So sometimes we feel like, man, there's this huge, like, we've got to live up to them. And, like, great as they are. But then I just remind myself at the end of the day, like, you know, the gospel is the most important thing. Like, if my family is on the right path, if we're able to live within our means, like you said, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, we're all going to die, and hopefully we go up to Heavenly Father, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how big my house is or whatever. So I think I'm, like, right along with what you just said. That's how
I'm worthy to hold a temple recommend. That's a big success.
Right.
That's my one thing, really. Like, if I'm worthy of holding my temple recommend, it's like, then I've lived my life well.
You must be doing everything else right if you're worthy to hold a temple recommend. That's like the ultimate success.
What about for you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think a good measure of success is your impact on others, because you could see in Lance Armstrong's case, all the people that he came across, all the people he influenced, it was not good. You know, he led them down the wrong path. He lied to people, and it had a very bad impact on a bunch of different lives. And so we can have that same impact, but in a good way. I think it's great to be someone who's kind, supportive, someone that can be trusted, and sort of spread those values.
Mm-hmm. Like, even though his foundation was a really good thing, it's kind of tainted by his reputation now. It's sad.
Yeah. Because, I mean, he did a lot of good things with, like, being motivational for people with cancer and everything, but none of that matters now.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because you cheat like that, and then everything else just goes out the window.
That's right.
Which is sad, because, I mean, that probably doesn't define every single aspect of who he is, but that's now what everyone...
for him. That's the impact he's going to be remembered for having. That's what's sad.
Yeah. Exactly. So make good choices. Don't dope. Awesome. Do you guys have any other comments or anything?
No, I know.
About the case study? Well, this is awesome. So next week, did you guys read that chapter 10 thing?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, so it basically says next week's case study is different. It's like, you've probably done it before. It's like those survival things, like what, out of all, this whole list, what's your top 5 that you would bring, yada, yada.
Okay.
You know what
So
I mean?
if you were stuck on an island or something like that?
Right. It's something like that. I didn't really read it super well, but it's not like an actual case study. So it says we might want to meet earlier in the week so that we have more time to do it. Can you meet any other time earlier, or do we just want to stick with Thursday?
I could probably make most times work if I'm not in class.
Right. What about?
I could do Tuesday.
Can you do Tuesday, Andrew?
Possibly. I gotta check on that.
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
Yeah.
We can just tentatively. We'll just still do Thursday then, but just know that we'll have like Thursday, Friday, Saturday to complete it. So.
Okay. If I can do Tuesday, I'll text everyone just to let you know if I can, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I can really time after 1. So.
Okay, so do we want to do? What time do we want to do it again? You can't do it at 2, so do we want to do it at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1 is good.
Like this time?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Could we do like 1:30? Because that would be harder for me to get 1.
Yeah.
What time does your start though?
It starts at 2. So if we did 1:30, it'd have to be fast. Or I just leave early.
Yeah. Do you want to do like 1? Can we do 1:15?
I could probably do 1:15.
Okay.
I will tentatively say yes to 1:15 on Tuesday.
Or could you do later in the day, like 3 o'clock, or no?
I could. I could do later.
But do you sometimes have work, Andrew?
Yeah, I could do 3. I just have to
won't
like
get
ready
home
for work
until
at 5 most.
So.
Until when? 3:30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you want to do 3:30 or do we want to do 1:15?
Later's better for me.
I think later could probably work.
Okay. So let's tentatively plan on 3:30. Stephanie, if you think it's not going to work, then just text us that day.
That should work because my workshop's done at 2:50 and it takes me like 20 minutes to get home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we don't have any time constraints.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. No, I don't have anything till like 6:30 that night. So.